Well, hello there, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWire TV interview. I'm joined today by Victor Lee. He is the CEO and co-founder of Communiteer. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. Lovely to meet you as well.
Great to have you here. Now, Victor, let's start at the beginning. What is Communiteer and how does it work?
Yeah, thanks. Look, Community is a social enterprise, and we use crowdsourcing technology to connect, engage, and mobilize volunteers to tackle the world's greatest challenges. So essentially, we facilitate collaboration between corporates, not-for-profits, universities, and of course, individuals, so that we can amplify our collective impact. So think of us as a combination of LinkedIn and Airtasker combined, but for social good.
It sounds very good, and obviously, it's something that hasn't been done before.
No. Look, I mean, the tech itself, obviously, I wouldn't say that we're the first one to do it, but we're certainly the first ones to use it for this setting. Yeah, which is about, contributing good and allowing people to get involved.
So that leads to the next sort of natural question, what made you decide to start Communiteer? What gave you the idea? What makes it unique? And how long have you been up and running?
Yeah, look, I've been in Australia since I was 7, 30 odd years ago, and first gen immigrant, and we didn't really have any contacts or friends around here. So one of the first things our family started doing was, volunteering at the local neighborhood hub or community center, because we thought, one, it's a great way to meet people. And two, it's a way for us to give back to the community that's given us the opportunity to be here. So ever since then, volunteering has just been kind of in our blood and in our family tradition. Since then, I've spent a good amount of time in both corporate sector and not-for-profit sector, about 10 years in each. And we really saw a gap where there's a lot of people who wants to do good and have the skills and that expertise to do a lot, but they haven't found the right thing for them to get involved in. And then on the other side, there's plenty of not-for-profit organizations struggling, and everyone's kind of trying to make ends meet and maybe try to teach themselves new skills through YouTube or whatever else, that they can really do with a lot of help from the corporate sector if someone can just come in and solve a business problem for them, maybe once in a blue moon. And that's all it takes for them to kind of survive and strive. So for us, we thought, let's put two and two together and make it really scalable. And we started doing, using a technology as that platform, and start thinking of ways to really scale that kind of involvement and interaction between a volunteer and a not-for-profit organization.
It's sort of like a blend of crowdfunding as well, or crowdsourcing. And I know that with some of the various clubs or associations I've been involved with, they're always looking for a treasurer. So that must be a big area for Communiteer, right?
Yeah. Look, that's a constant ask on our platform. I don't know why, but it seems to be maybe because once someone's found a really good, skill-based volunteer who's a good treasurer, they don't tend to let them go. No. I've seen, treasurers who's been around for multiple of years. So yeah, look, it's definitely one of the highest asks, and I think once you find the right one and you found, someone with an accounting background who believes in your cause, you just kind of hang on to them with dear life. So yeah, that's a great thing.
Absolutely. Well, probably needs to somehow be a bit more outreach to say, accountants, bookkeepers, treasurers, there are clubs across Australia, associations, groups, NFPs that desperately need your help. And if you can, spare some of that time, because these days it's a lot easier with all the online, bookkeeping and online accounts, and it's a much simpler task in one sense than it was. And also some of these clubs are quite small, some of these associations and NFPs. Obviously, if they're large and big, they'll have no problem employing somebody. But for the smaller groups, that's definitely one of the areas. But this makes me also wonder, what have been some of your, most profound learnings and successes thus far?
Yeah, look, so far we launched in June 2018, so it's been a bit over 3 years, and so far we've been really lucky to have a very good group of organizations. So far we've got 28 corporates, over 800 charities that are on our platform, and 7,000 volunteers on it all the time. That's kind of the highlight as a whole. But I think if I had to pick a few instances, it's a lot to do with COVID, actually. So at the beginning of COVID, we were fortunate enough to win a grant and a tender through the Victorian government. And we actually delivered education webinars and kind of upskilling different not-for-profit organizations in regional Victoria, 96 of them actually, to help them kind of guide them through, well, how do you actually pivot to a more virtual kind of service delivery? How do you engage with your volunteers in a remote manner? a lot of them haven't used Zoom before, for example. So it was actually a pretty big journey for them to step up and go, well, you can't involve them on a face-to-face level for a while. So what can you do to actually keep them engaged and keep them interested in what you have to do? So that's the first thing. And I guess more recently, we ran a really meaningful campaign called Pathway to Employment, which is really about involving students, usually at the pointy end of their graduate life. And as you may know, the job market hasn't been kind to the graduates recently. And it's really about introducing virtual mentoring and a bit of skill-based volunteering so that these students can get a bit of connection, get a bit of guidance, and really hone their skills and have something on their CV to show for it that can ultimately improve their employability in this quite tough job market.
Yeah, look, this is really critically crucial stuff. I'm part of the Australian Seniors Computer Clubs Association, ASCA, and of course, over the course of COVID, we've decided to completely digitally transform, go online. In fact, we still have a premises in Pitt Street at the Sydney Mechanics School of Arts that is empty, and that we're now looking for another tenant for to, move on from the lease. Because we no longer need that physical space. Some of the older people don't want to come, and that is great centralized office space that in normal times would be very quickly snapped up. But being able to reduce the costs, everyone's virtual. The directors and the clubs are spread across Australia, and so I'm sure there's been replicated in a lot of the organisations that you represent and that work with you. You explained it already. So this is it's one of those things. It's one of those moments in time. But I interview a lot of people in the tech world talking about, we're excellent at digital transformation and we help companies do this and do that. But all the companies and charities and NFPs and organisations you represent have the same needs and don't have the resources of those big companies. And these, of course, are the organisations that you are representing. So in a nutshell, what are some of the learnings that COVID forced upon you, both as a business and as an organisation that helps other businesses, other organisations, other not-for-profits? What did COVID teach you that it's still teaching you as we still go through these, just getting out of lockdown in Australia?
Yeah, look, the whole COVID experience has been a bit of bittersweet experience for us. We are for a social enterprise. So in a way, we feel the pressure of running a small business, and also the pressure of running as a not-for-profit organization as well. So I'll start there. We've actually had increased demand from the community sector over the last 18 to 24 months. People are definitely reaching out in terms of, hey, we need skilled volunteers to help us with this and this and this. But we also know that they're reaching out because they're hurting, and a lot of them are actually struggling to survive, which is a critical thing because they are providing a lot of frontline services for the sector. But in terms of skill set that they're looking for, the top four in the last kind of 18, 24 months has always been e-marketing, IT, business continuity, and compliance. So most of the not-for-profits we work with, especially at the beginning of COVID, were completely not ready for what's to come. Usually we're quite frugal with how we spend our resources, and infrastructure usually is kind of at a very distant last compared to client service delivery. So asking them and expecting them to just suddenly go into lockdown and work remotely is a monumental ask. Not to underestimate the fact that most clients of theirs actually prefer face-to-face and walking out like a retail shop to actually have that interaction anyway. So that kind of pivoting has actually happened quite a lot in the not-for-profit sector. On the other end, I guess with the corporates, actually helped us quite tremendously. So our business model is actually based on charging the corporates on a subscription fee to make it work. And if anything, COVID actually helped us filter out the corporates who actually want to do good and wants to kind of double down and invest in their resources, and the ones that kind of let go of their CSR team pretty much within a month of COVID hitting because they had to kind of save the bottom line. So that, in a way, helped us to define or differentiate who actually wants to do good versus who wants to just appear to look good. So that's been quite an interesting experience for us.
Well, I call it that virtue signaling. You figured out who was doing it and who was putting their money where their mouth was. So it's good. I mean, I guess separates the wheat from the chaff, and it's a shake-up. And, COVID had many, many negatives, but there's a couple of little positives that shone through. It's like every cloud has a silver lining, and whilst nobody who's been affected by COVID would think very highly of it, or none of us do, it's just the cycle of life. And It's interesting that we did have in Australia an NBN good enough to cope with all of that, but even so,
just in time.
just yeah. Well, I mean, if we had the superior fibre to the premises, that there may have, because it's hard to speed up digging trenches down the street and digging trenches into people's houses. Everyone says like speed it up, speed it up. Well, the problem was it was going to take a long time, and digging faster is difficult, especially when you've got all sorts of things in the ground. And had a lot of people been stuck on ADSL with 5 megabit download speeds and 1 megabit upload speeds, it would have been a disaster. So you mentioned briefly that the revenue stream is a subscription to corporates. Can you just expand on that briefly, what that is or what levels there are, and how else you create revenue?
Yeah, great. So again, we're a for-profit social enterprise, and ultimately we're trying to help the not-for-profit sector build capacity. So in a way, we felt intrinsically that we don't want to charge not-for-profits. It's actually about funneling resources to them. So that's going to be free for us for the as long as we go on. So everything we do is financially funded by the corporate sector, and it's based on a subscription model, an access fee, and then also a pay-as-you-go kind of service fee. So we actually charge per hour of volunteering that we facilitate and we kind of introduce and set up for a corporate volunteer. And we provide a CSR report noting exactly how your employees have actually contributed their skills and their time, and what has it done, and what has it helped, and the impact that you create. So that's kind of the model that we go with. And I guess the more your organization volunteers, the less it costs on an hourly rate, because we appreciate that people are putting in the effort to actually create impact. So that's kind of the business as usual. But for us, the other way that we grow is actually by fundraising. So we raise funds through actually equity rounds. So late in 2020, we actually sold off part of our equity to raise about $500,000 to kind of accelerate our growth. And everything's going steadily and according to plan. And we're already ramping up for another round of investment probably mid to late next year, to again help us accelerate and really solidify our position in Asia Pacific as the technology company to go to do good.
And so, what platform is Communiteer built on?
Look, it's a custom built platform from the ground up. It's a combination of JavaScript on the front end, Python on the back, and then SQL for database. We looked at actually anything kind of off the shelf, but like I said before, we're a little bit like LinkedIn and a bit like Airtasker. It's a bit of it's in a complete different context. So by the end of it, we're on kind of version 4 of our platform. We learned that we really need to create a unique experience for people to be incentivized and motivated to volunteer. And right now, the only way is to do it ourselves. So that's how we got about.
Look, Apple knows that the best way to control things is to make as much of the widget as you can. It's a good thing you're doing it too, and allows you to customize it. It's bespoke. It can scale as you require, based on the technologies you're built upon. So good to hear. That's good. Now, based on everything you've said so far, is there anything else that we should be knowing about Communiteer that you haven't already mentioned?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So it's probably about how can your audience get involved? Whether it's helping your organization like ESCA, or maybe it's about animal protection, climate change, whatever it may be. Everyone has different kind of motivations. But I guess all I want to say is at the moment, given your audience is from that tech background, technology skills is definitely the top 3 most needed skill in the not-for-profit sector at the moment, and it has been the case for the last 24 months. So we actually been working on a project called Digital Transformation Hub, where we ask skilled volunteers with an IT background to come in and help, just a not-for-profit leader assess what is it that they actually need help with, and then potentially to work on certain projects with them on a voluntary basis to get them along the way. Most of the organizations we help are very good at servicing the client and creating social change, but IT is just kind of this black hole that when it works, no one complains, but when it stops working, it's like, who do I go to? So it's definitely a key part for them to survive and really kind of pivot during this COVID season. And the other thing I want to mention is the fact that we're actually working with a lot of university students at the moment. So that Pathway to Employment campaign that I mentioned earlier in this meeting, we've actually been able to match up over 120 students with mentors and provide them with real skill-based opportunities from the proper organizations, which is great from the last 3 months of work. A problem we have is we've got a waiting list of over 200 students from 20 different universities across Australia, and we're desperately looking for mentors to get involved. So if you've got a bit of spare time and you don't mind kind of sharing some of your guidance and your experience in the job market with a recent or soon-to-be graduate, get involved. If you think your employer should do more good in that kind of space, ask them to keep in touch and get involved as well, because that's how we grow.
Wonderful. So one of the questions I always like to ask as we get towards the end of the interview is if you can please share a memory of your first computer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the first computer I owned was actually an Intel 386. It was a hand-me-down from my dad, and he's actually an IT background guy. All I remember was using it for Logo, the kind of pattern painting programming language, and also doing some, playing some very basic DOS games. And then actually I checked in with my dad, and he was like, no, the first computer you had was actually this IBM XT, where it was in his office and I was only like a 9-month-old baby and I was sitting on it. We were taking photos and it's just, those things are massive, right?
Yeah.
I actually have a copy of that photo where I was sitting on the desktop computer itself. And yeah, that's probably the first piece of memory I had.
Wonderful. And what also is a little bit more about your own history in the world of tech? You mentioned a little bit before about your background in volunteering, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, look, again, we thought of volunteering as a way to really connect with the community. So we were very involved in a locally run organization like, food services at local community services, neighborhood watch, doing Clean Up Australia for a particular region. But for tech, it's a bit of an interesting relationship. I mentioned my dad is from an IT background himself. He was actually the inventor of the first Chinese pager, in Hong Kong. Yeah, back when mobile phones were battery life of 35 minutes. Still in cars, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, he actually was part of the team that invented the Chinese pager, and so cool. I actually started studying computer engineering before I kind of turned into a social entrepreneur a while back. So it's been an interesting journey so far, and I think technology is definitely the way to go moving forward, especially for the sector. It's more like what's the best way to complement the need for technology without kind of cancelling the humanity side. We all want to see it.
Very noble, and you're doing it, which is even better. So how do you see the volunteering space evolving over the next couple of years? And where do you think the sector will be? What will it look like in the 2030s?
Yeah. Look, that's a hard question, and I don't have an exact crystal ball. But what I know is even pre-COVID, the volunteering pool of Australia has actually been shrinking, quite steadily, and it was dropping about 5 to 8% per year. But due to COVID, we actually lost about 85% of our volunteer pool just overnight because of lockdown. And we estimate that almost a third to half of that is not going to come back. So there's a pretty big hole to fill in terms of even just replenishing the volunteer pool, let alone growing it to meet the need. So for us, I think technology definitely has a huge part to play in that kind of replenishment of the volunteer pool. And in fact, I think as the newer generation grows up, and have a bit more of their own time and thought process around what do they want to get involved in and how do they want to actually do good, tech is definitely the way to go in terms of ease of access, convenience, choice, etc. But like I mentioned, it's going to be a gentle kind of, change around. Do you want to automate everything, but how do you do so without kind of really diluting the humanity aspects out of volunteering is the key part. So yeah, let's see how we go.
So my second last question was to ask, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received to help you get where you are today?
It's around the differences between persistence and perseverance. So one of my mentors actually said, when it comes to work, perseverance is the hard work that you do after you get tired of doing the hard work that you just done, right? It's a whole kind of, it's an inception thing. But, being a social entrepreneur might sound cool and, you wear a t-shirt to work and everything's okay, but that's more like a Hollywood language. But it's really hard work, and it's a bit of a roller coaster ride every single day. And you kind of truly empathize with other business owners and social entrepreneurs out there. But yeah, that perseverance has really kind of helped us keep going so far in the last 3.5 years.
So what's your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, to the business community, to the NFP sector, to all of your future customers and partners?
Brilliant. Look, first off, we're incredibly grateful that we've had such strong support from the community. I mentioned before, we're already working with over 2,000 corporates, 800 charities, and 7,000 skilled volunteers. But we see that as just a beginning, because the need is still out there. We're not meeting that need. What we want to do is really hit that critical mass by sometime mid next year. And we're looking for kind of roughly about 20,000 volunteers. So if you have a skill, no matter what they may be, please get involved. Come check out our website. And if you feel like your employer as a company should be more socially responsible, get them to come to one of our events so that we can connect with them and see whether there's an appetite there and how do we find the right angle so that the corporates are actually doing something that they are actually getting something out of it, whilst they are also providing the opportunity for staff to get involved. That's the only way to do this properly. And that's why we're here, to kind of find those collaborative opportunities. So yeah, just hit us up, have a look at what's available and see how you can get involved.
Sure, and just give us the web address again. And also, are these events virtual at the moment, and will they turn into hybrid at some point, or what's the short version there?
Yeah, look, we are specialists in virtual volunteering, and until lockdown has stabilized, I think virtual volunteering is still going to be the majority of opportunities out there. But we're already seeing signs that not-for-profits are opening back up to face-to-face events. So I think it's going to be a blend of two. It's up to you how you want to get involved. We're here to offer you the choice. And as for our website, it's www.communiteer.org. And you can go there, you can sign up to our platform, you can invite your CSR and sustainability manager to check us out and come to one of our free events, which we do monthly. And then we can have that dialogue and start that conversation and go from there.
Well, that's really encouraging. I wish you great success in the future and praise the success you've already enjoyed. It's it's a wonderful thing. I'm involved in volunteering myself with the various user groups over the years and with ASCA. So I'd love to talk to you again. I'd love to get ASCA involved with what you do. So they can definitely use some help if there are people out there willing to help. I encourage anyone watching this to get involved with Victor and Victor Lee, CEO and co-founder of Communiteer. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.